Barbadians warned about taking the approaching tropical storm for granted. People stocking up on supplies ahead of the passage of the weather system. Support from Barbadian National Hero, the Right Excellent Robyn, Rihanna, Fenty for the Bridgetown initiative. And in sports, the Windies skipper calls on his middle order to score runs.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC NewsNight, starting now.
Good evening, I'm Pearson Bowen. Barbadians are being cautioned against being complacent about preparing for the approaching tropical storm Brett. The advice from Acting Prime Minister Cynthia Bradshaw comes as the island remains under a tropical storm watch. She was visiting the Barbados Meteorological Services headquarters at Charlotte's Christchurch to get a first-hand look at their operations.
There are Barbadians who will say, sometimes the Met Office gets it wrong and therefore we're going to wait and see what is going to happen. And I want to say to you that that is not the approach that we must be taking at this time. Climate change is very, very real and Barbadians need to be prepared. In the same way that you would prepare for anything else, you need to make sure that you prepare for the hurricane season, prepare for this particular storm. If we get excess water, there's likely to be flooding. It therefore means that, you may have some disruption in terms of traffic, in terms of being able to get out of your house, and therefore it means that you need to go around the house, check to see, if you need to batten down anything around the house, check to see if there are any flying objects that may pick up in the storm winds.
Ms. Bradshaw says stakeholders, including emergency officials, have been meeting to assess preparedness for the hurricane season in general.
You can see that there are systems coming behind Brett. So this discussion in the last few days is not simply about this particular system, but it is to send a message to Barbadians that we cannot sit on our laurels any longer, just simply say that God is a Bajan, that the system is not going to hit us or it's going to pass us, because we are seeing a different pattern of behavior in the systems coming out of the Atlantic. And even with all the best intentions and the predictions that the Meteorological Department can do, in the same token, they can't play God, and therefore Barbadians need to make sure that they pay attention to the messaging that is being put out there as well.
Tropical storm Brett has showed signs of strengthening in the last few hours, but its center is now forecast to pass slightly further north of the island. At 5 p.m., the system was located about 605 kilometers east of Barbados as it continues to track westward. Well, joining us live now to tell us more is senior meteorologist Samelka Jackman. Ms. Jackman, good evening to you.
Good evening, Pearson. Good evening, listeners.
Thank you so much. Could you tell us what's the latest on Tropical Storm Brett?
Right. So as you mentioned, the system has strengthened slightly since the Hurricane Hunter has gone into the system this afternoon. We analyze the data from that so that we could see what is happening in the southern quadrants of the system, because as you just mentioned, the center is expected to pass just north of the island. So depending on how conditions are, the wind speeds are, as well as the cloud pattern and the shower activity that's expected to the south, that would be the impacts for Barbadians. I know we speak a lot about the data and a lot about the wind speeds and the amount of rainfall, but I know most persons want to know what does that mean for them and when they could expect any impacts. So for the system, the main hazards that we can expect out of Tropical Storm Brett would be the marine, the rainfall, and then of course the winds. The marine conditions we expect to deteriorate a little earlier. That would be the first thing. So early tomorrow morning you start to see that deterioration of marine conditions where the seas start to look choppy, and of course that would peak when the center is closest to the island, which would be during the afternoon tomorrow. Additionally, for the rainfall, we are expecting that as the center draws closer to Barbados, you'll start to see those bands ahead of Brett that would bring some shower activity across the island. And of course, we are seeing, because of the cloud pattern associated with the storm, we are seeing most of the shower activity to the east of the system, which means after the center passes, then we here in Barbados we are likely to receive most of the rainfall. Similarly with the winds, we are expecting from the Hurricane Hunter mission this afternoon, we saw that you had wind speed almost during force extending out from the center in the southeastern quadrant. So that means after the center passes, then we would start to see that pickup in wind speeds. However, we've been talking a lot about the uncertainty of the forecast, the uncertainty of the track, and how much impacts we would get. So that is something that we will continue to monitor tonight. There are supposed to be 2 additional missions going into the storm tonight. So when we would go again and analyze the data, see the movement, as well as we're going to look to see how the wind speeds have increased or decreased at the southern section of the system, so that we could know if these impacts that I spoke to you about, there will be more or they will be less, and we'll be able to give that update to the public early in the morning.
Well, certainly Barbadians should be aware that there will be some impact and to prepare. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Jackman. Well, even as uncertainty surrounds the path Tropical Storm Brett is taking, Barbadians have been heading to supermarkets to purchase necessities. Water, snacks and tin foods were on the list for shoppers at Jordan's Supermarket at Fitzvillage and Carlton and A1 in Black Rock.
I prepare before, and I get in some bottled water and, a few little items. It's always calm before the storm, so you got to be prepared.
I have my canned stuff already, but I'm just doing a little bit of top up on my stuff and my waters.
I am preparing because they say that the weather is coming. It don't come, but I am preparing. I'm trying to get this stuff so that I could, for me and my family.
I'm just here getting some supplies for the upcoming storm. So just want to tell the people to be safe and make sure you got what you need so that when the rains come, you don't have to leave home, just like I am doing right now.
We would normally make sure that we have few items in the house, such as biscuits, tuna, sardine, some snacks for the children. We don't stock up on the frozen stuff. If we have frozen stuff, we would try to cook them as soon as possible to eliminate the process of them going bad in case the current goes off.
I realize I have no batteries at home, so basically I come to get that, get some juices, some snacks, and the basic things that you would need for this time of the year.
Well, mariners also appear to have heeded the warning from Met Office officials about deteriorating sea conditions from tonight. Both a small craft and high surf advisory are in effect, as choppy conditions are expected with swells between 8 to 11 feet. When videographer Chris Wood visited the Oistins fishing complex this afternoon, a number of vessels had been brought on land for safety. Well, the Department of Emergency Management has been tasked with helping prepare Barbadians for situations such as this one with Tropical Storm Brett. Joining us now to give us an update on plans for the system and the season in general is the Director of the DEM, Carrie Hines. Ms. Hines, good evening to you.
Hello, good evening to you, Pearson, and good evening to all Barbadians.
Given that the island is under tropical storm watch, what should residents now be doing in preparation from your perspective?
Well, persons should have been ensuring that they have the necessary items, emergency items, to run them through the storm phase. They really should have been looking around their homes to ensure that they don't have any loose objects that may become missiles, because as you know, with the storm it brings rain and wind. You should have ensured that you have your family emergency kits, know where you need to go if you have to evacuate your homes, and generally just bunker down, ensure that you have your shuttering, you clean your drains. So there's so many different things that you need to ensure that you put in place. And you need to have sat down with your family and your friends and go through your preparedness plans, what you will do in the eventuality.
What can you tell us tonight about the preparedness of shelters should there be a need to activate?
Well, prior to the beginning of the hurricane season, the authorities would have audited the various shelters, and we ensured that the list of shelters was available to the public. You can go to our various websites, the Government Information Service or the Department of Emergency, and the list of shelters are there. It is important that persons know the closest shelter to their homes, so that in the instance that they need to evacuate, they can go there. The Category 1 shelters, if needs be, they will be open before the system passes. So it is very important to note that we would have done our preparedness measures, ensure that we have those places of refuge available to you as a member of the public.
People, when they identify their emergency, are often looking for help. Who should they contact? Should they contact you at the DEM, or should they contact the emergency services, or vice versa?
They can contact us at the DM 438-7575. You still have the normal emergency operations in terms of police, fire as well. If there are any medical emergencies, you can call the ambulance service. As you may know, persons may know, we usually have our crisis coordination center where we bring the various agencies together and we ride out the storm, ensuring that we're taking in a lot of the information, and we are doing our final planning and that type of thing, so that we are, every step of the way, we are ensuring that we understand the situation and we're there to respond to persons once conditions allow.
Ms. Hines, you have allayed most of our fears. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on the CBC Newsnight. Carrie Hines, Director of the Department of Emergency Management. Thank you. Well, as Barbadians brace for the possible impact of Tropical Storm Brett, the Barbados Defense Force is ensuring it can respond to any scenario, both on land and at sea. Sharika Griffith recently got a first-hand look at preparations, and she filed this report.
While the Atlantic hurricane season officially begins in June, preparations for the Barbados Defense Force start months earlier. This usually entails an assessment of available personnel to determine their skills, the creation of teams, and the packing of hurricane boxes, which contain key pieces of equipment such as chainsaws, goggles, and helmets. Training is also a critical component.
So they all train on how to use the basic things, chainsaws, generators, how to use the block and tackles, drills and all of that, how to be able to medically lift someone. So we go through that, a lot of HIDR training, because we're not sure what we're going to get, but we ensure all personnel are trained in those particular areas based on the teams that they're in.
Captain Wesley Beckles is second in command of the Barbados Regiment, the land force component of the BDF. He explains during the passage of a storm, officers batten down at their assigned bases until the all clear is given, at which point they spring into action, clearing main arteries such as those leading to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and the airport. They also respond to emergencies.
We do quite a bit of search and rescue. We're now experiencing a bit more flooding inland, so we actually go out and deal with that. Rooftops blown off, so we then send our guys out to help with replacing roofs for persons that would need that assistance. But predominantly a lot of it is search and rescue. We don't get a lot of recovery, thank God, but we are also prepped for that as well. So if you have to do a recovery, then it's a combination between the Barbados Fire Service, the Barbados Police Service and us. We will figure out how best to recover bodies if needed.
While the regiment's focus is on land, the Barbados Coast Guard handles matters at sea. Sub-Lieutenant Sasha Marshall is the Coast Guard's Hurricane Preparedness Officer.
Prior to the hurricane, we have these small boats. They go out and they do marshalling. And really the marshalling is to get as many boats off the water as we can prior to the passage of the hurricane. What we also do is we send out security broadcasts via our HF and UHF system to the fishermen so that, they have ample time to get off the water before the system passes.
Adverse weather can usually mean choppy seas, but Sub-Lieutenant Marshall explains there's a protocol to ensure offshore patrol vessels, or OPVs, are kept safe.
Depending on the severity of the storm or the direction that it's tracking, we have built into our security mechanism the opportunity to go to Trinidad, or, well, again, it depends on which direction the hurricane is tracking. So we can either go south to Trinidad or Grenada, or north to St. Kitts or to Antigua, and that's really our safety mechanism to make sure that the OPVs are not damaged in the event of a hurricane.
While the BDF stands ready to assist in the event of severe weather, residents are being encouraged to be more self-sufficient by ensuring around their homes are clean and even learning first aid. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
Sharika, thank you. Coming up, support from the Right Excellent Robyn Rihanna Fenty for Prime Minister Mottley's Bridgetown initiative. World leaders are heading to Paris for a summit to push for global debt and climate reform. French President Emmanuel Macron notes the summit for a new global financial pact is aimed at building a new consensus to meet the interlinked global targets of tackling poverty, curbing planet heating emissions, and protecting nature. The two-day summit begins tomorrow. Leaders arriving in Paris to champion that message include Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley. Ms. Mottley, in a tweet, says change is needed, and that's why she's in Paris for the summit for a new global financing pact. Barbadian National Hero, the Right Excellent Robyn Rihanna Fenty, also joined the cause, appealing for support for the Barbadian leader. Ms. Mottley, in reply, thanked Rihanna and stated the Bridgetown initiative is an opportunity for world leaders to reform development finance and help poor countries address the climate crisis. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change says the Caribbean is perfectly positioned to help develop solutions to current challenges. Executive Secretary Simon Steele shared the view as he delivered the 2023 William G. Demas Memorial Lecture in St. Lucia. He says Caribbean countries face the challenge of pledged support and promises going unfulfilled.
High debt burdens, low fiscal space, extreme vulnerability to external shocks, and low economies of scale, to name only a few. We also know that nearly $6 trillion is needed across all sectors in developing countries by 2050 to meet our climate commitments. We couldn't have greater clarity from the scientists that the scale of the problem is enormous and that there is a cavernous gap between what actions are needed and our political, regulatory, and societal response.
Right, for that first look on sports, we'll be joined by Mark Seal now. Mark, good evening.
Very good evening to everyone. We're going to start with cricket, where the West Indies middle order needs to find form heading into the remaining qualifying fixtures if they're to convincingly get into the main draw. That's the contention of Captain Shea Hope, speaking on the eve of the Windies match against Nepal tomorrow morning.
The middle order has been the biggest concern for us of late. But again, all of our batters need to pull the weight. We need to take full responsibility with the bat and give our bowlers the best opportunity to finish games. Again, if we get a good start with two openers bat the entire innings, then we don't have to worry about the middle. But yeah, like I said, we have to take full responsibility as a batting group and make sure we get those big totals on the board. And if we're chasing, to score the runs in a more convincing manner. One thing about our squad, we have a lot of depth. I think, especially in the batting department, we bat basically till number 11. But it's not for the lower order to be pulling the weight for us. We need to make sure that as a batting group, the top half of the batters are doing the bulk of the work. But again, Kimo, he's shown his class. He's one of the most skillful bowlers, in my opinion, in the Caribbean. And it's nice to see that he's showing the world what he's capable of. I hope that he can continue this stead and we can get a lot more consistent performances from him.
Responding to criticisms on why the regional team is now fighting in a qualifying phase after they didn't gain direct access to the main competition, Captain Hope says the squad only have themselves to blame.
We've put ourselves in this position and everyone knows that. And to me, it's only one way forward from here. And as long as we understand that as a group, that's the start, really and truly. Like, we need to understand that we put ourselves in this situation. And we need to make sure we get out these qualifiers and show the world that West Indies is a team to really be reckoned with.
In business tonight, Harris Paints is looking at ways to innovatively use sargassum seaweed in its products. Speaking to the media following a memorandum of understanding signed with the UWI, Chief Executive Officer of the Harris Paints Group of Companies, Ian Kenyon, says their goals are not for today, but to map the future.
Innovation doesn't just come from looking at what's sitting on the can of paint today. It's looking at the future in terms of what should go into that can of paint. How could we use sargassum to create a resin that could be used in paints? So the bioresin side of things. Hopefully that kind of answers you some of the ideas of what we're looking at. It's certainly not just down to conventional paint. We're thinking way outside of that proverbial box to look at solutions from oysters to roofs and everything in between.
A robotics expert says the country still needs to do more to catch up with the rest of the world as he lauds Barbados for introducing coding and robotics in schools. Jelani Payne offered his perspective during day one of assessments under World Skills Barbados at the Lord Erskine Sandiford Centre. He notes the robotic revolution is ongoing worldwide and it cannot be avoided.
Rather than, saying Barbados is behind, what I will say instead is there is significant growth, right, that needs to happen. So I always give this example. Anytime I do a presentation to adults, teachers, even students, I let them know on Amazon.com there are books for students, or rather I should say for youth, our children, toddlers actually, ages 3 years old, in machine learning. Now, that's a very technical subject. Why would someone create a book like that? And it's a whole series of books. So clearly the world is at a place that we kind of need to catch up and we need to go to. We need to understand this thing is happening. Unless you are a very wealthy person who can try to avoid it.
Getting right back at it once again, here's Mark Seal.
Thank you very much. Barbados started the table tennis program at the CAC Games in El Salvador with a 3-love men's team victory over Honduras in Group D. The doubles team of Trevor Farley and Mark Dowell won their game 3-love. Therese Knight won his singles match 3-1, and Dowell, returning in the singles, won 3-love. However, in the women's Group C, Barbados lost to Cuba 3-love, with the doubles team of Angela Reid and Crystal Harvey, and the single players Antoinette Riley along with Harvey all losing 3-love. Now, as we continue to shine the spotlight on our CAC team at the ongoing games, CBC's Anne-Marie Burke features 2 sports making their debut at the games.
Let's take our journey to San Salvador as we feature Team Barbados. As chess makes its debut at the CAC Games, going into the history books as the first team from Barbados will be Flight Master Martin Del Castillo, International Master Orlando Husbands, Woman Candidate Master Julissa Figueroa Del Castillo, and top junior female player Hannah Wilson. The road to the CAC saw the Barbados team come out of the qualifiers back in January in 11th place from 20 teams, the first 15 being afforded a place in El Salvador. And national men's champion Del Castillo says it's truly an honor.
I'm very grateful and proud to be able to represent my country at the CAC event. It's a very prestigious event, and I think it's a great opportunity for us chess players to demonstrate our skills at such a stage.
Having made it to the regional multi-sport stage, a format to be played will be rapid chess, or blitz as it's known.
The time control that we're going to be playing is the faster version of the game, so I know a lot of people are even more familiar with the chess as being a very slow game, but actually what we're going to do over there is play a faster game, which is 3 minutes thinking time per game, and also another one which is 15 minutes per game. So a lot of our training has been more geared towards this faster time control, which is a lot more entertaining for spectators also.
To ensure they're up to speed, the team recently engaged in a tournament to step up their readiness.
Well, first and foremost is to play a lot of games that are in that time format, because when you have to, there's not much time to think, so you tend to need to play moves that are more practical, not necessarily looking for the very best move, which can consume a lot of thinking time, and to make those kind of decisions, we need to play a lot in those conditions. So what I did is in May, I was afforded the opportunity to go and play a tournament in Dominican Republic. And in that tournament, we had the same time control now that we're going to go and play in the CAC. So that was really good preparation.
Castillo is no stranger to the international stage, so he has a good gauge of his potential opponents.
I'm familiar with most of the players there. Quite a few of them I've played before, even also in this tournament recently in Dominican Republic. I think it's going to be a very tough tournament. Anything can happen. I think both the team that Barbados is sending is a very good team. So we've done a lot of the preparation beforehand. It's just now to put that into practice over the board when we're there.
And here's a little tidbit. Martin's wife is Jalissa Figueroa, so we have a husband and wife team ready to hit the boards.
I think she's progressing well as also, and she also played a tournament in Dominican Republic. Same kind of preparation that I'm doing, she's doing, but she's going to be playing with the ladies. And it's really good to see that she's also, the Barbados team also sends ladies also in addition to the men. So there are two divisions, and I think that she's also going to do well.
And like we want to rally behind the entire CAC team, come on, throw your support behind our chess players as well.
This is a really exciting time format, these faster games. And I think that the rest of the team are also pretty well prepared for this format. And it should be interesting to see chess for the first time at this stage, and hopefully in future it continues and it generates a lot of interest for players locally.
The other sport which makes its debut at the CAC Games is netball, and these are the 12 young ladies chosen to rep Team 246. Jada Smith, Shanika Griffith, Tanisha Rockyall, Sabrina Smith, Rihanna Holder, Latonia Blackman, Faye Agard, Akina Stout, Trishan Dean, Kimani Archer, Tamara Trotman, and Victoria Monaville. We'll also have a 6-member tennis team in Kaipo Marshall, Hannah Chambers, Xavier Lawrence, Serena Bryan, Stephen Slocum, and Gabrielle Leslie. And we have 4 in shooting: Marin Bino, Dave Seal, Tisona Aline, and Misha Elliott.
That's our time tonight. Thank you for spending it with us. I'm Pearson Bowen. For the crew, to all of you, good night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for visiting us. Now, if you want to see more stories like this one, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can always go to cbc.bb for the latest news and current affairs.